Hi everyone. So in this exercise, we'll take a look at question 203 on Leetcode.com. And the question is remove all elements from a linked list of integers that have a value val. So in this case, we would remove the first node. If val were 2, we'd remove the second. And as well, if they have multiple nodes with the same value, then we'd remove all of them matching the value. And in this exercise, we'll actually look at a slightly different way of iterating over the linked list. And it's also something that you'll be using very often. So it's another core technique that you really want to get comfortable with, like comfortable understanding it and comfortable implementing it as well. And essentially, the reason why we'll use this technique is because let's say we want to remove, the first node, as is the case here. Well, we'd have to deal with some kind of special logic inside the body of our while loop, and that's not what we want to do. We want to try and keep that logic outside of the while loop, and make the inside of the body of the while loop as simple as we possibly can. And the way that we'll actually do this is, once again, a very common technique, which is called using a dummy head. And in this case, generally, like, you would set the value of your dummy head to -1, and you'd connect it up. So your head could still be pointing here. That's not really important. All that really matters is that this is your dummy head, and I'll just write dummy, and your node that you use to iterate would point towards your dummy head to begin with. Okay? And the other thing to bear in mind as well, I'll put this here, your node, fine. Your node will be pointing up here. And the other thing that you'll want to bear in mind as well is that inside the body of your while loop, you'll say while node dot next. Instead of what we were doing earlier was saying while node, and now we're actually saying while node dot next, and that essentially does a couple of things for us, and it works in conjunction with this dummy node, with this dummy head principle. So effectively, what it means is that we're always actually looking at one node ahead. So when we're in here, we change color. When we're in here, we're actually interested in checking out the value of node.next. And likewise, if node is pointing here, then what we're actually probing is the value of node.next. So with this technique, we're actually always probing one node ahead. And since we're breaking on node.next, it also means that node.next is always going to be valid inside the body of your while loop. So you've got something that you can always use, and you can also modify it even if it's the head, and it really kind of solves two problems and kills two birds in one stone. So the only thing to remember is that you're actually manipulating the next node and not the current one. So let's go ahead and actually code this now that we've explained it, and hopefully it will make a lot more sense. So we'll begin with dummy head equal this node -1. Then dummy head dot next equal head. And thirdly, we'll say node equal dummy head. So let's just sort of discuss what we've done here. We have declared our dummy head. Our dummy head to be this guy. Our dummy head.next is indeed the head. And thirdly, node, which we'll use to iterate, indeed points towards the dummy head. Okay, so this is what we've done, and we are now set up and ready to start iterating. And do remember the caveat, we're saying while node dot next instead of while node. And as before, we'll say node equal node dot next. And if we simply wanted to print out the value of this linked list, instead of saying print node dot val, we'd say print node dot next dot val. And we'd get the same kind of behavior. And again, you know, we start here, so we print node.next.val, and then node equal node.next. So we're here, we print 2, then we're here, we print 3, and then we're here, we print 4, and then we assign node.next to node, and that means that node.next is now null, and we break out of the for loop, of the while loop rather. So this is the same with the addition of the dummy head. So what's the next thing that we probably need to be doing here? Well, the next thing that we need to do is to check whether this value is equal to val. And the way that we would do that is to do, well, you know, if node.next.val equal val. And now we're probing the value of the next node. And if that is the case, and indeed this is the case, then the question is, what do we want to do at this point? Well, what we may want to do is to actually connect our current node. We want to connect like it's next to the next node. Because what that means is that we're now cutting this one out, and now our dummy head is still here, and our next node is 2, and ultimately, if val is 1, then the linked list that we want to return is this one, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go ahead and do that. And the way that we would do that is to say node.next equal node.next.next. Good. So once again, this is going to bridge over, and essentially we're no longer interested in this guy. And do remember that if you want to be correct, really correct, you may want to remember to actually set the next value of this node to none as well, so you don't end up with a dangling node. But I'll leave that to you as a kind of extra exercise. And so finally, if we do actually do that, do we want to say node equal node.next? Now, what happens if I say node equal node.next? Well, node would then be pointing here, and remember that our algorithm is always probing the next node. So if this node happened to have value 1, then it wouldn't get deleted, and we'd end up with the list 1, 3, and 4, which is not what we want. So if we don't make that assignment, then we'll actually end up with what we want, which is on the next iteration, we'll want to continue probing the next node. And then if that next node has the value 1, then the same thing will happen. We'll end up pointing over to the next node and simply ignore this one. So therefore, we'll just want to say else node equal node.next. And we are nearly done, because now we've done this. We've removed this node because it was equal, had the value that we wanted to get rid of. So what do we actually need to return from the function? And the answer is we'll want to return dummyhead.next. Dummyhead.next, which is going to be 2 in this case. So I'll say return dummyhead.next, and that should be done. So let's actually test this out. And remove elements. Okay, that is now passing. So indeed, Leetcode question 203 is now complete. And once again, as always, I strongly suggest that you go ahead and code this yourself if you were simply watching along, and get really comfortable coding this without looking at the answer before really continuing to move on with the following questions. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll speak to you in our next exercise.